All right, moving on to genealogies. We're getting into the Christmas season, so I have some questions about that coming up, and this is kind of one of them. It goes along with it. Why are the genealogies of Jesus completely different? In Matthew, Jacob is the father of Joseph, but in Luke, Heli is the father of Joseph. The lists from David to Joseph are completely different.
Right. Jesus had two parents. And so one most likely is the one in Luke is most likely Mary's genealogy. And so we know for sure the one in Matthew is the genealogy of Joseph, because when you look at the Greek in the passage, for example, I'll start in verse 14. Atzor begot Zadok, Zadok begot Achim, Achim begot Eliad, Eliad begot Eleazar, Eleazar begot Mathan, Mathan begot Jacob, and Jacob begot Joseph. And so you have the word begot in that passage. When you go over to Luke's gospel, let me get there. This is in Luke chapter 3. It says in verse 23, and this genealogy goes the reverse of the one in Matthew's gospel. It says, now Jesus himself began his ministry at about 30 years of age, being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph. And you see the word son in that passage, and it is not in italics. And then all the way through the rest of the passage, you see the phrase the son in italics. And the reason it's in italics in those passages is because the word the son is not in the passage. So what it literally says is Jesus, being, as was supposed, the son of Joseph, it goes on and says, of Heli, of Mathat, of Levi, of Melchi, of Janna, and all the way down to Adam, and then finally of God, after Adam in that passage. And so the Luke passage does not say that Joseph was literally begotten of Heli. And so most commentators, and I agree with them, believe that what this is talking about is the genealogy of Christ through Mary. There's a really good chance that Mary's father probably adopted Joseph, and it may have been because of Joseph's kindness towards Mary, in that Mary was pregnant before their wedding was consummated, and so he literally, Joseph himself may literally have been in the lineage of Mary specifically because of that. And so you got some interesting things that go along in there. But one we're talking about Mary's genealogy, the other one we'd be talking about Joseph's genealogy in Matthew. One of the interesting things is that the genealogy in Matthew includes the genealogy of the kings that came after David. And there is specifically a curse that's put on the line of David because of disobedience to the Lord. And specifically, one of the things that it says in the book of Jeremiah is that the Jeconiah, who was one of the descendants of David, one of the last kings of Israel, would not have any of his ancestors sitting on the throne of David. And the problem with that is that Jesus has to sit on the throne of David, according to the Gospel of Luke, where Gabriel is talking to Mary and literally telling Mary that Jesus is going to sit on the throne of David. Well, he can't do that if he's physically of Joseph, because Joseph is of the line of Jeconiah. And so the way that God circumvented that whole thing was by making Joseph Jesus' foster father, and so he would have the legal right to the throne of David, while Jesus was physically born from Mary, where he is also of the seed and of the lineage of David. And what happens in Luke's gospel is the genealogy veers off right after David. And so with Matthew's gospel, it goes through the line of Solomon, which is the line of the kings, And through in Luke's gospel, it takes off through the line of Nathan, which is another son of David. By the way, Nathan was named after David's sin with Bathsheba.
Right.
And so that's what Nathan was, the name of the prophet that outed David, which tells you something about David's character there. In any case, that's the line, the lineage that you have that comes out in Luke chapter 3. And again, it's most likely the lineage of Mary.
So what's cool about that is you get on the internet and you have all these people going, the Bible contradictions prove that the word is not true. And when you go through the history, the fact that it's tracking bloodlines to the Messiah through an adopted father and the bloodline of Mary, it's the biblical genealogy that makes those things fit. And if you take the contradicted version, it wouldn't work.
Right.
So it's like a double whammy on the protesters and the contradictors. Is like, well, no, you actually just don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly it. They just don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah. It's cool though, because you see the depth there's no way that you can make that up.
Yeah.
You know, it's just too integrated.
Yeah. Yep.
So cool stuff. All right, moving on.
One more thing about
Yeah.
that: genealogies stop after the genealogy of Christ.
Right.
There aren't any more.
Yeah.
And it tells you part of the purpose of the genealogies, and that purpose was to point to Jesus. And when Jesus finally comes, when the purpose of the genealogies are fulfilled, we are commanded not to be involved in endless genealogies in Timothy.
Right.
And the reason is because it's not about you; it's about Jesus.
Yeah. A lot of people, some people have questions like in Genesis. Well, what happened to these people? And it kind of skips over, like generations of people. And the point is because it's tracking the bloodline of the Messiah, it doesn't care about the history of the world.
Right. Exactly.